New York, as well as a 230 units in Atlanta, Georgia. She began her real estate journey by acquiring single-family homes for rehab and resale and transitioning to multifamily acquisitions in 2012. She's been involved in acquisitions in Ohio, Atlanta, Tennessee, Georgia, and New York, valued over 21 million. She's also co-founder of a real estate networking group, Multifamily Apartment Investing Unveiled, in Garden City, New York. Very exciting. We're very pleased to have you. Any questions that anyone has, make sure you go ahead and type in the question and answer box. We will make sure that we get to those at 1:45. So this is till 12:30 Eastern Standard Time to 1:45. And go ahead and take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for joining me on this Saturday afternoon. Today, what we're going to be talking about is women in multifamily real estate, the challenges and what we bring to the table. Now, before I begin, I kind of want to throw a disclaimer out there. What I'm going to be talking about today is exclusively experience-based. I'm going to be talking a lot about mindset in the first half of this presentation, and then I want to go into some very concrete examples of things that's gone on in my business to support what I'm saying. But there's no scientific data points that I'm providing you to support the feedback that I'm giving. So this is something that you can take in, you can reject it, you can accept it, or just kind of mull it over. What I'm hoping is that there's some tidbit today that I provide that can inspire those of you that are not taking action, can inspire you to take some action. So I just want to quickly bring up a little history about myself, Sharpline Equity, my partner, Christopher Jackson. That's a little bit of his bio. Myself, I went to NYU and then Brooklyn Law School. I started out as an attorney and practiced for a while. And then I transitioned into real estate in 2009, as recently mentioned, with starting out in single family flips, and then I transitioned over into multifamily in 2012. Currently, just to give you a quick history of what's happening right now, we have sponsored and syndicated deals in those 4 states. Currently, we have a 40 single family unit portfolio in Syracuse, and we have about 230 units multifamily in Atlanta. So that's where we are right now, just to give you a little history. And now I want to dig into more detail of my employment history. So as I said before, I started out practicing law. Now that is still an industry that's male dominated. The gap is closing. I think statistics today stand about 60% men, 40% women. But I didn't really feel that in the offices that I worked at and in the courthouses that I needed to be in for my practice. I really didn't feel like I worked in a male-dominated industry. However, that was a completely different experience when I transitioned into a corporate position at an insurance company. My legal background afforded me the opportunity to work in claims, and then I transitioned into underwriting, and I underwrote large construction projects throughout the country. And that was an extremely male-dominated office. I was the only female underwriter in my office, and my entire client base was male. I dealt with owners of construction companies, and they were all men. Then, like I said before, in 2009, I transitioned into real estate. I left the practice of law, started flipping, and I had 3 male partners. And then finally, I transitioned over into multifamily. I currently have my male partner, Chris Jackson, and we do have a female JV partner. Her name is Sonia Rockville of Berry Rockville Enterprises. So I'm just going to give her a little plug. So now we're getting into some challenges. And if you haven't gleaned so far from what I've been talking about, the first challenge I want to talk about is the fact that we are, surprise, surprise, people, working in a male-dominated industry. Having begun in 2009 in this industry, I wanted to think of some examples, again, all my personal experience of what I've experienced with respect to this context, and I was surprised at some of the things that when I finally wanted to put fact down on paper what I came up with. Since 2009, I've been doing this for 10 years. In my travels, I have never dealt with a female commercial real estate broker. That was really surprising to me, but it is my fact. It is my personal history in this industry. We interview dozens of third-party management companies every time we go into a market. I mean, I can go on to a whole separate presentation on the importance of your third-party management team. We do not self-manage all, as you saw in my, my portfolio. All of our assets, they're not in our own backyard. I'm from Long Island, in case you couldn't tell from the accent. And so your third-party management team is I believe, your most important team member. We spend a tremendous amount of time vetting out those companies. And to date, I have only come across one management company that is female owned. That's my fact. This panel discussion is actually a great example. Kudos to Dan Hanford and his team for putting together, and this isn't the first time, this amazing investor summit with all these great speakers, adding such value by speaking on the array of topics that they're speaking on. And even Dan's blast, his email blast marketing this investor summit. Those email blasts had pictures, and prominently featured were female speakers. I applaud him, and I appreciate the fact that he invited female speakers and he featured them in his advertising. But the reality of the situation is there's a little over, I believe, 70 speakers here in this summit this weekend speaking. And including me, I think there's 14 female speakers. So that's about 18% of the speakers at this summit are female. That's just the reality of the situation. And I want to bring up a recent example because it is so recent. I have a gentleman colleague that I know for a long time, really great, a great person, great business person. He's got a very successful multifamily investment company. I think he probably at this point has about 1,000 units under his belt. So really doing well. He's local also to my region. We live and work in the same area. And he recently hosted, he runs a meetup on a regular basis and gets a pretty large crowd attending. And he recently hosted a panel discussion. And, I got a blast of the advertisement, and it was all men. It was all men, no women. And, I'm laughing because it's like I'm practically his neighbor, and he didn't think to put a female on that panel. Now, I'm going to go back to this example later on in the presentation, but I just want you to remember this example, and we will definitely get back to it. So we talked about the fact, okay, we are working in a male-dominated industry, and that has a set of challenges that we'll talk about. I want to move on to a second challenge that I perceive to be a challenge for women in particular, and I'm going to call it the challenge of the perspective. Now, the definition of perspective is a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something, a point of view. The synonyms that I pulled out was stand, stance, slant, attitude, frame of reference, approach. Okay? So when I talk about perspective, first I want to talk about the fact that I believe that our perspectives can be influenced by a whole host of external factors. Our upbringing, our socioeconomic status, our religious affinity, our political bent, our social network, who we spend time with. So I believe all of those things can affect your perspective. However, I'm going to rein that in for a second and now talk about another thing with respect to this. I think that there are certain things that we can control in this world and certain things that we just can't. And it brings to mind a very famous prayer called the Serenity Prayer. I'm sure most people are familiar with it. It's a pretty long prayer, but actually the first couple of lines are the most famous. And it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, right? That's the crux of that very powerful group of sentences I just talked about, the wisdom to know the difference between what you can and cannot control in life. And I believe although our perspectives can be and are likely are affected by a lot of external factors, I do believe our perspective is something that we can choose to control. So I want to talk about for a second some very common perspectives that I believe have, being a woman, talking to a lot of women in the industry, reading a lot of books about women and working women in the business context. I've picked out what I feel are three top common perspectives women have. Okay, the first are men are more comfortable dealing or working with other men. And I call it the bro down. And I'm actually stealing that term from my partner, Chris Jackson, because he often talks about when he comes off a really great conversation, whether it be in a social context or a business context, he always looks like, oh, I had this great bro down. And of course, it's always in the context of him talking to another man, that he never refers to that when he's talking to another woman. And that's fine. I think there's no negative connotation to this. The fact that men may feel more comfortable with other men. And I think that's probably the same for most women. I'm always going to be talking in generalities. There's always exceptions to the rule. But I think it's fair to say that women are more comfortable with women and vice versa. Okay, the second common perspective I think women have. Women are not taken as seriously as their male counterparts and perhaps not as well respected. Okay, that's the second one. And the third one, which probably I should have listed as the first one, because women talk about this all the time to me, is when men exert themselves in a very powerful way, they're often viewed as, this is the women's perspective, strong and confident and powerful. But if women do the same thing and exert themselves in a very powerful way, women are very keen to the idea that men are perceiving them as too aggressive or too pushy, or some other choice words that I can think of that I choose not to put in this presentation. Okay, so these are three common perspectives that I think women have. Now I'm going to shift gears for 1 second and go on to a different topic, and then I'll bring it all home. And I want to talk about the fact that, again, not a surprise, this is not corporate America. So when I was preparing for this presentation and I was talking to another female colleague, she had recommended to read this book, which I did. It's called Play Like a Man, Win Like a Woman by Gail Evans. And it's a really quick read, and it's a very good book. It was written a while ago. It was written in about 2000 or 2001. So it's a little bit dated, but really most of the ideas and the feedback that she's giving and what she's discussing, it transcends time. So actually, if you have time, I would recommend you read it as well. And as I was going through it, one of the things that jumped out of the page that was a very aha moment for me, again, you think it's the obvious to say this is not corporate America, but is it really in your conscious? Are you really very self-aware of this one particular thing? Because I wasn't. And she makes the commentary in the book. She specifically says, what I am saying in this book, the recommendations, the feedback, the information I'm providing, I really want to address the women in corporate America. I'm not addressing, and the point of this book is not to address the women who have stepped out of corporate America and are operating their own businesses, entrepreneurs. And that was a light bulb moment for me, because she talks a lot about the playing field, right? That's a common metaphor, the game of life and the game of business and the playing field that you are on. So she talks a lot about the playing field you're on in the business world. And guess what? The playing field that we are on is way different because of the fact that we're not in corporate America. So I'm saying something that's very obvious, but I want to say, guys, keep that in your mind. Keep that front and center. We are not worrying about the glass ceiling. We are not concerned about, in our context, in our business world, the fact inequities of pay, or the fact that we're not being promoted as fast as our male counterparts. That's not part of what our issues are or our challenges. Now, I'm not saying there's no challenges. In fact, this whole presentation is about what I feel the challenges that we have to face working in this male industry, but you can approach these challenges very differently than the way that, let's say, Gail Evans is recommending you approach them when you're working in corporate America. So I want to just put that out there. And the other thing I want to say is, part and parcel of what's going on here is the power shift in the relationships. In this industry, the relationship, you are often not, you're not dealing with a boss, you're not dealing with a male boss. You often are the client, which gives you a lot of power. Potential management companies are looking to you as the client. Brokers, in the particular context you're working with, view you as the client. And the fact that you have something to offer gives you power and leverage. So I just want you to make this your first perspective shift. It is the fact that we are not working in corporate America. Now I want to go back to those 3 common perspectives that we just talked about. And I want to kind of turn them on their head a little bit and talk about the first one. Men are more comfortable dealing or working with other men, the bro down. And I say to you, so what? Women not taken as seriously as their male counterparts, perhaps not as well respected. And again, I'm going to say, so what? Men, when they exert themselves, are strong and confident, but when women do the same thing, they're perceived as too aggressive. So what? What if your new perspective is that the above presumptions are either false, they really don't exist in the situation that you're in, or even more powerful is to say they don't matter. They don't matter. If you can make that perspective shift and say you neither care about these perspectives or you don't believe they matter, this, when I tell you, can clear a path for you in a way in your mind. It did for me, and I'm going to call it the path of empowerment. Because giving these are very negative perspectives for women to have. And the tendency, I think, for women to occasionally obsess about those perspectives, you're giving those perspectives a lot of power. And if you take that power away from these perspectives and shift your mindset, shift your attitude, shift your approach, you take away their power, you clear the clutter in your head, because that's all it really does. It clutters your head with a lot of negativity. And that clears a path for empowerment. I'm going to give you a piece of feedback that a female mentor gave to me a very long time ago. And I'm paraphrasing, but this was very powerful for me when she said this. She said, your presumption of what people think about you should be replaced with the presumption that they are not thinking about you at all. And that is self-explanatory, and it was really powerful to me. She used to say to me, Krista, people are dealing with their own stuff most of the time. So stop obsessing about what they're thinking about you, because they're not thinking about you. The likelihood is they're not thinking about you. So that was very powerful for me. And, I recommend that when you are caught up in a whirlwind of negative thoughts, worrying about what someone thinks about you, remember what she said to me. So, you clear the path a little bit, you clear the clutter, you shift your perspective to get those negative perspectives out, disempower them. What can you focus on? I want women to focus on what they can bring to the table. I want women to recognize what some of our natural talents and skill sets are and double down on them in your business. Double down on them. And the first thing that I want to talk about is what I call intelligent bravado. And again, I stole this phrase from Chris Jackson. So we were, I steal a lot from Chris. We were talking about this. Chris is a very deep guy, and he likes to get into the psychological mindset of people and kind of what makes them tick and what makes them do what they do. And we started talking about the confidence that men have, in general, the confidence and the bravado that men seem to have all of the time. And I brought this up, and Chris agreed. I said, I really feel like men, the source of their strength and their confidence is their ego, and their motivation seems to be to support that ego, so that they're very egocentric in what they do, why they do it, and where their source of strength comes from. And I just don't think it's the same for women. I am not saying women do not have egos, but I'm saying I don't feel it to be the driving force for them to do what they do. It's not where their inspiration comes from. It's not where their strength comes from. I feel like it's a little bit more complex with women. Just off the top of my head, some of the reasons I feel we do what we do is, independence, whether it be psychological, financial, emotional independence, being good role models for our children, supporting other women. There tends to be that camaraderie with the women, standing out and being an example for other women as well, wanting to strike a balance, a work balance, and our family balance, so strike that balance. I just think there's multiple reasons for doing what we do, and in my opinion, ego is just not a part of it. But Chris came up for women with the term intelligent bravado, because what I'm saying is we have bravado, but I don't think women tap into it enough. And we're calling it intelligent bravado for this reason. I think women have the gumption to be that confident, standout person with bravado, the way men do, but in a different way. Men, I think, can come off operating a little bit more off the cuff, and that is not I don't think that's not where women come from. Our confidence, I think, is sourced in our need and our desire and our natural tendency to really cross our T's and dot our I's, and that means knowledge and preparation. Knowledge and preparation. And I think that's where the source of our confidence comes from. And now we just need to steal a page from the men's playbook and be bold with it. Be bold with that confidence. One of the first examples I'm going to talk about was me personally. When I got into multifamily, I syndicated my very first deal. So as I mentioned before, back in 2012, when I was doing this, I had male partners. But for our first presentation, they weren't keen on stepping up to the plate and presenting. And so I did that. And knowledge and preparation, and I'm not talking about the fact that I prepared for that PowerPoint. I joined a mentorship program, and I got very intense coaching for months prior to this presentation, so that by the time I got to the point of presenting, I knew how to present, and I knew the data points, and I knew the information that I wanted to present regarding why you invest in multifamily, the benefits of passive multifamily investing, and how we research our markets and how we research our deals, and then how we do pro formas and how we project. So, I crossed every T and I dotted every I, and I did that presentation, my very first one coming out of the gate. And I remember the feedback I received when that presentation was over, the very first one. You always kind of remember the first time for everything. I had people walking up to me after that presentation and saying, Krista, we realize this is your first deal, but you would never know it. It sounded like you've been doing this for years. And that was really important feedback for me, because it really made me realize that confidence that I portrayed, or that I provided in that presentation, it really translated over to them. And they felt it. And here's the bottom line. If you're not confident in yourself, how is anyone else going to be confident in you? How are the people that you want to partner up with in your deals going to be confident with you? How are investors going to feel confident doing business with you if you yourself can't exert that confidence? So be bold. Source yourself in intelligence and preparation. I think we do that best. And then go out there and exert that intelligent bravado. Be consistent in your action. I don't dwell, because I've shifted my perspective. One of the challenges about that bro down that I mentioned is, one of the challenges you'll find in multifamily is deal flow, getting that deal flow. I can obsess on the idea that male brokers, apparently there are more of them out there than the women, because I have yet to deal with the female commercial real estate broker, although I'm sure they're out there. I could obsess on the idea that I'm not getting deal flow because, the male brokers are picking up the phone and calling their other male contacts that they know. that are looking for deals. I can obsess over that. Or I could just be consistent and in your face. I could be, and what I have done, you got to keep showing up. Okay, I'm shifting the perspective. I'm not thinking about it because A, I could be wrong, or B, I don't care. And I keep calling them up, and I keep emailing them, and I keep going to their markets and setting up appointments to get in front of their face. I'm not thinking about why they're not giving the deals to me. I'm thinking about what do I need to do to get them to give the deals to me. And when I made that shift in my perspective, I started seeing the deal flow from them. So consistent action. Ask for what you want. Ask for what, be bold, ask for what you want. When my colleague and friend blasted that email out that he was having that panel discussion, and I saw the panel of male faces, I didn't wonder why he didn't, decide to put a female up there. I didn't give it a second thought. I don't know why. I don't care why. It could have just not been, part and parcel of what he was thinking at the moment. It didn't have to be a personal insult or a personal affront against me or women in general. I didn't think about it. But what I did do is I picked up the phone and I called him and I said, yo, awesome that you're getting into panel discussions. I think that's awesome. Are you doing another one? Would you consider featuring a female or having a female as part of that panel discussion? And if I'm available, can I be that woman? Ask for what you want. Okay, you may be the only woman in the room, and in a particular instance, take advantage of that. Maybe they're going to remember you because you were the only woman in the room at that point in time. So use that. Intelligent bravado. Okay, moving on to something on a little bit more quieter side, but so important. I'm going to give you guys an example of what happened in my business that was so important. So I want to talk about our natural tendency. Again, I'm talking in general, doesn't apply to every woman out there, but in general, I think women have a natural tendency to be nurturers. They really, really, really care about relationships, and they nurture those relationships. And I am going to give you a prime example of what happened in my business. And it specifically addresses the relationship you have with your clients. Okay, so I'm talking to people who are syndicating this deal. The client experience matters, people. That's what I want to hone in on, okay? I was involved in a passive investment. I'm involved in many passive investments. Even though I'm an active sponsor and syndicator, I have passive income that I plant in a lot of my colleagues' deals. So I invested in a particular deal of a male colleague that I know and trust. And I also knew another couple that had invested in his deal as well. He did a great job. It was about a 3.5-year deal, and he far surpassed his projections. The returns, I want to say, my recollection, annualized out at a little less than 30% annualized. So incredible results. Kudos to him. I was very happy with that. Now, I know this gentleman well. I know and trust him. So I think that's why this didn't land on me in the beginning. The couple that I knew that invested in the deal did not know him as well. So when we had connected at a certain point, and we were talking about the results of this deal, and they were very unhappy. And I was like, why would you be, you're like, wow, you got almost 100% return profit. Why are you unhappy? And they brought up the fact that the reporting was really horrible. And, when I look back on it and I think about it, they were right. It was pretty abysmal. This gentleman colleague did do an initial webinar when he first closed the deal. There was one webinar during the hold. There was no written reporting. There was no annual summing up type of reporting at the end of the year. We knew a bit about the sale. He didn't give any explanation as to the motivation of the sale, what happened, why it happened. We just got our checks in the mail one day with a short cover letter. And I'm sure he was relying on the results, right? He was very results focused, like, I returned them almost 100%. Kudos to me, patting himself on the back, I'm sure. But his inability or his remiss in nurturing the relationship with the client was a crucial, critical mistake. That couple said to me, Krista, if this is the reporting that I can expect when a deal is going well, what should I expect if I invest in a deal and it doesn't go as well? And that feedback was right on. Like, it was right on. And when they said that to me, it made me realize even more, how important it is, the nurturing of that client relationship. Yes, we're all results oriented. We really, we're driven to produce those results that we project in the beginning of a deal. But do not lose your focus on this piece. And I think women are naturally inclined to focus on this. So double down on it, and always focus on that client experience. That's a solid example that I'm providing you. Of course, this translates to your other relationships as well, your relationships with your partners and brokers and your lenders. Nurturing those relationships are only going to bring about good results in your business. Now, what else can we bring to the table? I feel like this is so obvious, but I want to point something out about master multitaskers, which I believe women are naturally. I was listening to a podcast recently, and it was a very successful male multifamily investor and syndicator, and he was talking about multitasking, and he was encouraging people not to multitask, and he was more of the mindset: pick a task, focus on the task, complete the task, move on to your next task. That's how he operates his business, and he feels his success has been driven by that type of mindset. And I was kind of giggling listening to it, because I know the women in this room are saying, are you kidding me? I physically can't operate like that. I mean, I can give you an example. I can sit down at my desk at any given moment. I'll be on the phone scheduling my children's annual medical checkups. I got a PowerPoint on my screen that I'm currently drafting, and I'll have my smaller screen up with my emails that I'm looking at to figure out which email I need to answer within the first hour of the morning, because they're priority. I mean, multitasking, what I'm trying to say is, I believe women are master multitaskers. We are dealing with our business, our relationships, our family, our children, and we're doing it all at the same time. Double down on it. If you're good at it, and I venture to guess that you are, don't necessarily listen to the feedback and have them talk you out of that. I mean, double down on it, get even better at it. It's only going to move your business forward. You're going to get things done faster. So double down on that piece. And I think, our tendency to be detail oriented and our organizational skill sets that we have, that it all leads to that. And it lends to that, I should say. The other thing that I want to talk about that is not necessarily a bad thing. I think I might have created that word. I don't know if emotionalism is actually a real word, but it's my word that I put in there. And it's about emotionalism and the idea that women tend to be more emotional. I think that most people will agree that's the case. And there's not a negative connotation to that. So I want to put that out there right away. I don't believe that there has to be a negative connotation. And in fact, it can translate into your business in a huge way. And I've gotten feedback from a very important person in my life about that. I worked for a manager in my insurance world, when I worked in the insurance world. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to give this to him. He was actually one of the most phenomenal multitaskers I've ever witnessed. So I just want to put that out there. Even though I think women have a natural tendency to be master multitaskers, there are men that are out there that can do it and do it well. And he put me to shame in how many things he can take care of at once. So, but he was just a role model for me in a lot of ways. He was an excellent manager, an excellent leader. And he said to me, Krista, one day, he said to me, Krista, your biggest flaw is your absolute greatest strength. And what he was talking to me about was my emotionalism and my tendency to be very emotional. And the part that he was talking about that was my strength was my passion and my enthusiasm. And he said to me, that comes through. It's so evident in everything that you do. and it comes through to us in the office. I can see it coming through to the clients when we're in front of clients and other colleagues. And he really was like my cheerleader in that regard. And he really egged me on to say, you know, that is such a good thing. It's contagious. Not everyone has it. Not everyone utilizes it. So he made me realize it's a good thing. Focus on it. And he encouraged that in me. The only thing that, you know, he probably didn't have to remind me of this. I've been reminded by several people. I myself know I'm one of the biggest perpetrators of this. And the only thing that I would suggest that women in particular need to be aware of, and I know you guys know it, and this is me just reminding you of it, is to keep your emotionalism in check when you're in charged situations. I think we all know, and this applies to men too, you know, sometimes if we react out of emotion in a particular situation, bad things can happen. So I think it's harder though for women to rein that in and keep yourself in check. So I would just caution everyone, especially women, to think about what they're about to say or how they're about to react, particularly if it's in a charged situation. But again, the passion and enthusiasm, not only important in what my manager pointed out, but it also, I just want to mention this, you know, this is an exciting business, but it's not exciting 24/7. There's a lot of mundane parts of this business. There's a lot of, you know, tedious parts of this business. And it is, and there's frustrating and challenging parts of this business. And your passion and enthusiasm, in my experience, it will sustain you during those lulls in your business where either things are going wrong or you're bogged down in really tedious tasks, or you're not seeing results and you're getting discouraged and frustrating. Tapping in to your emotionalism and your passion and your enthusiasm is something that it's a source for all of us. So I just want to remind you guys about that. Again, this presentation, a little bit different than the other presentations. I just want to put out there things that I think us women have naturally, and just make it part of the skill set that you use in your business. And this is part of it. Seeking out the yin and yang. So what I want to talk about this particular phrase, and it applies to both men and women. This is not just to women, but I have found that I have gravitated a lot towards men in my business because I'm very aware of what they bring to the table. Like, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And sometimes the strengths and the weaknesses, in my opinion, are due to it, they're gender biased. So I'm very aware for what men bring to the table. And I think that's why I've gravitated towards them in my business. I think that's why when I keep partnering up with other partners, they seem to be male partners. Not that they haven't had women partners in my business. My JV partner is a woman. But it's really important to recognize your strengths, which is what this presentation is about. Recognize your weaknesses and go seek out other people to fill those holes, those weak holes that you have, whether they're men or women. Again, for me, I've gravitated towards men, but they could be other women. It's just about recognizing where you are weak. And instead of trying, I'm not saying don't work on your weaknesses, but I am saying it may be more efficient time-wise to double down on your strengths and then just look to work and align yourself with other people to fill in those parts where you are weak. So that could be, you know, men or women, but overall, it's just about, I'm going to move on to the next point. It's just about, you know, creating that team of people, whether it's actual partnerships or JVs or mentors, coaches, you know, people that you're just aligning yourself out so you become this well-rounded team, you know, moving forward, where everyone has their strengths, their weaknesses, but it all works together in a very symbiotic way. Men, if there are any men in this room listening to this, I would take take some of this. I hope this is a few morsels of information regarding you. I would ask you to be a little bit more aware of what I'm mentioning right now about women, and seek that out in your women counterparts, and work with them because of it. That gentleman who provided exceptional results in his deal, in 30% annualized, lost clients. He lost a future client. Those people did not roll into his next deal, because that nurturing attitude, he did not have a female on his team. I know the structure of his company. There were no women in his company. Nobody focused on that piece. And he lost business because of it. And I don't know how much business he lost. He could have lost more than just their money. So I say to the men out there, like, understand that women do bring things to the table, and it is well worth your while to seek out women because of what they can bring to the table, and work with them in some capacity, and help they can fill your weaknesses and fill your gaps. I looked long and hard, people, for an inspirational quote for women, and written by a woman. And I thank God for Google, but honestly, I think I read through about 400 quotes in preparation for this presentation. And that one jumped out at me, not only because of its simplicity. The most effective way to do it is to do it. Spoken by Amelia Earhart, not only because of its simplicity, and not only because a woman said it, but I just feel like that really gets to the heart of what I am saying, that for those of you that are blocked in some way, form, or fashion, and part of what I'm saying is part of the block may be your perspective, how you're approaching things, the slant that you have in certain situations, how you're viewing it. This to me breaks through all of it. It was like an arrow. Like, this just broke through to exactly what I'm trying to say. Clear the path, shift the perspective, dismiss those thoughts, and just do whatever it is you've been blocked in doing. Just go out and do it. I actually feel that Nike, actually, subconsciously or not, someone in that Nike marketing department read this quote first and then adapted it into their "just do it" motto. And I'm happy to find out that a woman is the source of that motto, because I really think that this hits home. Just go out and do it. And so what I want to say is, whether or not you have questions of this presentation, or if something comes up later on for you, my email is there, and reach out to me if there's anything that you want to talk about kind of offline, about any blocks that you're having and any of the experiences that I've had. I would be more than happy to talk through that with you, because I do believe in the idea of women, reaching out to other women who have traveled the journey to, my journey's ongoing, all of it is. But, I have been traveling this journey for a long time now, and I think I can add some value to you. And so please, my point is, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll have an offline discussion. But if there's any questions, I'm happy to talk about it right now.
Krista, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I definitely learned a lot and definitely took a lot of notes, so very excited about that. Currently, I don't see any questions in the Q&A. So if anything comes up, the best way for someone to reach you is Krista at sharplineequity.com.
Sharplineequity.com. Yes, that's also our website, and you can definitely, you can get a hold of me through that platform.
Okay, well, we are extremely early, so it ends at 1:45. Any other tips or anything else you'd like to end for closing remarks?
With respect to this context, I think the fact that anyone's even a part of this incredible summit, what you're doing right now in prep, and I don't know, I mean, there's probably very experienced people, listening to the various speakers, as well as people who are very new. But this, I would encourage people to continue to log in, join up on these type of platforms, whether in person or online. The education and the value that people are offering, just talking about their experiences and their journeys, is a great tool. But what I'm also going to say is, alongside doing that, because education is so important, you need to get into action right away. So my recommendation is, you can prep for an eternity and get nowhere. Your preparation and the knowledge you're acquiring, it needs to travel parallel with you getting into action immediately, in whatever way that may be. Getting into a mentorship program, a coaching program that helps you with your next step, but you need to take action immediately. So do both. Join these summits, get educated, but get into action. Just do it. The most effective way to do it is do it. So take action.
I definitely agree with you. Yeah, I think that's very important, is make sure you have a strong mindset and just go out there and do it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Very good. Well, great presentation. Thank you very much for all the attendees that came on today. We learned a ton of knowledge from you. Very excited to have you on, and very excited to have you on in the near future. And thank you very much for your time on this Saturday.
You are very welcome, guys. Everyone enjoy your weekend. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
All right, that was a ton of knowledge. I'm glad I stayed tuned to that one and learned a lot. Wanted to remind you again, the iPad giveaway right here. 3 ways to enter. Register for January 2020 Summit at nextmfin.com. That will get you 1 entry in the chance to win the iPad. Multifamily Investor Nation podcast. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. Post a review on it, and when you post the review, take a screenshot and send it to Stacy at multifamilyinvestornation.com to get 1 entry in to a chance to win the iPad. The third is Multifamily, the Summit participation. 50% is 1 entry, 75% is 3 entries, and over 90% is 10 entries into a chance to win the iPad. You definitely want to get involved with that. We are very early. I know the next break is at 1:45, so I just wanted to give you a heads up for the next panels and the next speakers in the next room. Starting at 2 p.m., we're going to have Lane Kwalka in room number 1, and then Henry Lai in room number 2, and that's from 2 to 3:15. Then from there at 3:30 to 4:45, we have Robert Beardsley in room number 1, and Noki Ray also in room number 1 as a panel discussion, which is very exciting. And then we have another panel discussion at 3:30 to 4:45 in room number 1, Devin Elder and Anna Myers. That one will definitely be an extremely good one. You do not want to miss that. We have at 3:30 to 4:45 Eastern Standard Time, Richard Wilson in room number 2. And then at 5 o'clock, that's when this room will be taken again. Ellie Pierman in room number 1, John Jacobus in room number 2, and Annie Dickerson, Good Egg Investment, right here in room number 3. So you're definitely not going to want to miss that. Next time, I will see you at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here in room number 3.